Okay, this is bonus material. Tomorrow's going to be the last day I do these recordings, but today I watched a film. So I want to talk a little bit about entertainment, not really so much about herb, but I just want to talk about various films. Why not? Okay, because I've watched a lot of films, and I find, the seduction that we have for films. If you watch films when you're young and you're really impressed by a few films, like the first film that I seriously was like, wow, it was Dune. Okay, it was what's his name? David Lynch's film. Although he's disowned it and it's rubbish, I think he's just being a little bit egotistic. It's a remarkable film. Remarkable film. The graphics and so on and so forth. He put a lot of effort in. Yes, he didn't have full control about the editing. Okay, calm down, Mr. David Lynch. You would have thought he'd got over it with his mindfulness and everything else, but no. But anyway, I was a kid when I watched that, and it was. When you're a kid, you kind of just watch these things. You just take them in. You're not really aware of how spectacular they are. Another film was Tron. I saw that when I was a kid. And back then, that was incredible graphics. It got slated, bombed, I think, in terms of what people thought of it. But when you're a kid, you just go, oh, okay, that's what it is. And that was bleeding edge technology. That was the first properly computer-generated film. They had massive sections that were just invented on a computer. Okay? So, or more recently, about 20 years ago, we're at Matrix. If you look at that film, incredible graphics. I just watched the second one, which got slated. All right, amazing. That action scene with the extended call it an action scene on the when he's fighting a bunch of werewolves and various other kinds of characters, and then they go onto the the road, the motorway. It's an extended scene with graphics that are unbelievable. Well, in fact, specifically unbelievable, where they're getting chased and they're getting shot, and there are agents trying to get them as well. It's just incredible, and they're fighting on top of a truck. It's just like it's incredible. And when they were chasing, the camera was literally tracking the motorbike through the traffic, and it literally goes underneath and between the wheels of various vehicles, just to kind of indicate to you this is all gets completely made up. Okay, it's completely made up. All right. All right. So I just want to talk about some of these films, just to go. When you watch them when you're a kid, and then you watch them when you're a bit older, these things kind of informed us and resonated with us in some sense. So when you're older and then you watch these things again, you kind of go, oh, is that what they were? Oh, wow, this is what you are, because they've informed us. So part of that film and that mythology is within us. So, and that's what herb is. Okay, so we're writing something in the beginning of the 20s, 2020 and so on, and then we're going to watch it, but maybe, if things work out, okay, those stories will be recreated in about, let's say 10 years, 20 years, okay, closer to 2040, and it'll be redone. If any of this works, and or if it's actually worth anything. And it's like, oh, okay, so how will they be redone? We can learn a trick or two from what was happened in the past. So, for example, there are kids now that are amazed by Marvel. Over the last 10 years, they've been sitting there, oh, wow, Marvel, blah, blah, the world, oh, the universe, blah, blah, blah. And then in, 20 years' time, 15 years maybe, actually, yeah, probably 10 to 15 years, when they look at these films, when they're adults, a bit older, what are they actually going to think? Okay, what are they going to think? How are they going to actually look at this? And will they be on with goggles and virtually? Will they actually be performing like superheroes in their own scripts and films with other people? Maybe. The problem is that if it's offered to a couple of us, what, is everybody else just going to be just normal people that just get shot and killed and mangled? Or are there going to be like a million superhero Marvel characters? It's not really sustainable. Okay, so there are slight problems with this. But I want to have a look just at how we can kind of look at this and learn something. There's a couple of films. I'm just going to go through a few of these. All right. So Matrix, because that was probably the most significant one that I had a tattoo on my back of my head before I watched this, and then when a friend of mine said, "You haven't watched Matrix? Oh, you're going to be amazed when you watch it because there's something got this tattoo in the back of my head. And they're going to think amazing." And I watched it, and I was very impressed by it. Like many people. So a lot of people that are my age, 50, 2020, were influenced or strongly resonant because of the intellectual, but then the action. And then there was a break, and then it was the second and the third were coming out almost simultaneously. And I was looking forward to it because I'd imagined a reversal where the actual, who they thought were the enemy, the machines, and Smith wasn't. Okay, what they were trying to do was trying to basically stop the radicals from stopping and basically destroying the Matrix, because the Matrix was actually a mechanism by which we could actually communicate with aliens. Okay, so it was AI trying to communicate with aliens, and this whole idea of and pods and everything else. No, that's because people chose for that to happen, because we can actually communicate in virtual worlds and so on and so forth. And the specific matrix that these guys, that film was in, is it was not particularly pleasant matrix. But that's because some people want to play that kind of game, let's call it. However, most of the humanity is actually exploring some, incredible, beautiful, mental, escaped heaven, basically. And so that's what I thought the reversal was going to be. And so when I watched Reloaded, I was a bit like, well, quite what I thought. And it's not bad. It's not bad. It's good. It's good. It's good. I mean, the Wachowskis, amazing. And then I watched it again. Now it's called Reloaded. Now my version of what I'm about to say to these things, other people go, "Oh no, that's not what I thought." That's fine. Don't worry. I will purposely manipulate things in order to get a better, get more out of it. Okay, so I'm not trying to work out what Matrix is about and how solid that world is. And like Inception. Okay, I'm talking about Inception and saying, "Oh, right, Inception." And Inception's amazing. Inception's amazing, brilliant. The temporal frame of it, it's just, and the direction and everything. It's just like brilliant. Okay. So all kudos to the brothers. They're actually brothers, I think, involved in writing that. Christopher Nolan and his brother. Brilliant. Okay, but what people tend to do, it's like Star Trek as well. And I grew up with Star Trek. I was a very small kid, and my parents, I was like a very small kid. And Star Trek, and you'd watch the Star Trek programs, it was just so good. It was so good. The sounds and stuff and all it was so good. But what happened when they went back to it? Again, it was about 20 years later. Was it 25, maybe 30 years later? And they came up with the first feature films. And the first one was like, they were trying to get really, 2001-esque on it. I wasn't so good. But the second one, and I was then a teenager or a young adult maybe, and the first, the can thing, and it was like the old series, and it had a bit more dynamism, so it was sci-fi, it was updated, but it was actually the same kind of stuff. It wasn't like 2001. 2001 is amazing, obviously. When you watch it when you're a bit older, you're just like, that's a Stan Kubrick, of course, was a genius. Anyway, look, I'm trying to just get down to something. So, Star Trek, everybody starts talking about Star Trek and then getting involved in the reality of Star Trek and becoming Trekkies and so on and so forth. Same with Star Wars. Okay, people are, become Jedi, and you're like, wait, the world's falling apart, and we're just taking these passports with our luxury, spending ludicrous amounts of money and a lot of our time, and arguing about these worlds. That's kind of crazy. Okay. And the Star Wars, when that came out, the first lot were obviously amazing. Okay. The first, was it 4, 5, 6, and then gosh, what's his name? Do you see how I can't remember names? George somebody. Lucas. Yeah. He produced the 1, 2, and 3, there was a big build up for that. I think it was around about 2000. Yeah, it was around about 2000. And, I went to see that and I was like, it was pretty good, pretty good. People were complaining because, it was so different, it wasn't so interesting, and the language and the script, and you're like, no, it was really good. Yes, it introduces midi-chlorians or whatever the hell they are. Oh, but that's not, was it, canon, and blah, 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 blah. Just calm down. It's all made up. It's just, nonsense, yeah? But the level of politics involved, because he had grown older, he actually started developing a lot more of the political shenanigans that were going on. It was quite a complex environment. I think the actor, he should have chose better actors. I think that they didn't quite carry it. I think she was amazing. Yeah, what's her name? Not Layla. Princess Ajamomu, or whatever. All right, she was really good. Okay, she's obviously proven to be incredible subsequently. And then, of course, years passed, and then we had the reboots with number 7, which was, I think, was good, and then 8, 9, Rogue One, seriously good. Now that was a fairly good evolution, but the last one, as everybody knows, they were just trying to put it all together and tidy up, and they botched it with different versions from 7 and 8 and 9, and the storylines and taking the history of the family, and then actually, okay, it was not even that, and now you're the grandchild of Snoke or whatever. It's like, who cares? What a load of rubbish. And if it was actually in the hands of Mr. George Lucas, it's ancient, 70s or something. So he would come up with something that was actually a bit more sophisticated, you would have thought. He's had a lot of time thinking about it. But, okay, so something happens. Now that was a global heritage. Okay, I'm yapping away, but basically I'm talking about, this is a global heritage. This, in the 70s, I think it was, 70s, with the first Star Wars. Global phenomenon. And then, the second lot, and then the third lot. They're playing around with our childhood. It's a remarkable responsibility. And look what happened. And it's because I've left this stuff up because tomorrow is the last day and I'm going to make use of this. It's all to do with business. Making money, business. That's too much of that. So, there's something in the time period as we grow older, if it's new people coming along, and it's great to have new people, but if they're going in there and kind of just making a mess of it, it's just a bit like, we're just repeating it. We're just getting more people to get into the Star Wars thing. It's like, no. That's not what we're going to do with URB. Okay, URB is about us. Okay, so the people that write stuff in 2040 regarding URB, whether it's games or films or whatever it is, it's about reflecting our present and giving us some kind of idea about the future a little. Enough for us to go, ooh, that's an interesting thing. How can we make use of that? So it's a reflective thing. Okay. And the people who produce that in 2040 have to honour whatever it is that's been produced in the past, but they also have to reflect what's currently happening. And it's not about just a passport to Fantasyland, okay, and just coming up with canon. All right, canon, like, religious canon, like, Christianity canon. And it's a bit like that. It's a bit like, it's all fantasy. It's all just made up stuff just to entertain. Came out, Star Wars. There was this young guy in his early 20s, came up with some stuff, story, blah, Star Wars, blah, blah, and just came up with, lightsabers, blah, blah. Now, but if you look at the actual mythology of it, there's some very interesting stuff about lightsabers and cutting through, and the Jedi kind of samurai light. If you look at, zero social distance, and the fact that we project our minds, light, that kind of thing. And the light and the dark side, it's all very interesting. Very interesting. Quite, basic, but good. And we could have made use of that, because we're facing, environmental collapse of various kinds, and they're just trying to make more money. It's just, explore and just, it's nonsense, all right? Inception's brilliant. Tenet, about time, forwards, backwards. Oh, there are people in the future trying to do things. I was so worried about Tenet. I wasn't so worried. I was slightly concerned. Because Inception was brilliant to do with realities and all this kind of stuff, which is what I do. If you look at any of the other stuff. Tenet was like to do with time. I was like, oh, no, that's what I do. Everything that I do is to do with the time, okay? We are time walkers, okay? And to actually have Tenet, and a masterful filmmaker and writer, as far as I can tell, and coming up with Tenet, it was like, backwards in time. I was like, oh God, I wonder if he's going to have some of the similar ideas. And no, it doesn't quite hang together. There's some aspects of it that are interesting. People in the future communicating. Okay, so if we're talking about 2040, okay, how do they communicate with us? And of course, Tenet is, well, trying to kill us, okay? Or they're trying to communicate certain things, build certain things. It was just a bit clumsy, okay? So, unlucky. Marvel, as I say. Now, Marvel itself was a recreation of all the comics, Stan Lee and so on, okay? And that was a lot of young people. Comics, fantasy, coming up with stuff, and superheroes and everything else. And then the first ones to do that. And I think it was Iron Man that really took things off because it was very realistic. It was just a person, iron suit, tech. And since we'd all had this tech, you can see why the creators of the films were informed by tech, the West Coast of America. West Coast of America was Hollywood, okay, the origination of the Dream Factory. And so it's not surprising, it's also Silicon Valley, that they came up with, Marvel superheroes, and specifically the two that were kind of successful. Batman was a normal person with a lot of money and tech, and what's his name? Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man, again, a normal, well, not normal, so super genius, okay, coming up with some tech. Okay, so it's not that surprising that it came out of the West Coast. Fine. Avatar. Avatar's coming out pretty soon. Now that's very, very interesting because where the other ones have botched it, that happened, what was it, 2010? It's been 10 years. We're about to see the second one. And I suspect he's just going to do the same kind of thing, but in the sea. Okay, which is fine. But the problem was with 2010 was that, the world's burning, the water's rising, all this kind of problem. And, more people are more related about the blue people in this world than they are about the actual people in the Amazon and people like dying. The environment's being taken away from pre-literate societies. People are more concerned. There are more people concerned about blue people in Avatar. And that's not Cameron's objective. Okay, Cameron's objective is to say something about nature and how do we fight back? How do we fight back against, the exploitation that's going on? Well, I know what we're going to do is we'll create a film and everybody's relating to blue people and want to be blue people. Okay, so the better it is, the better it is. Now, that's why I'm doing this incredibly low tech, because, we could make it a little bit better. And if you look at some videos of explanation, they're amazing, but they're never going to compete with these kind of things. This is multi-million, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the most skillful people on the planet trying to produce an incredibly graphic, beautifully constructed narrative that really engage you. And whatever we do about the world, okay, and the state of the world, and whatever we're trying to do up to 2040, there is no way we can compete with this. I mean, none. Politicians, you must be joking. Oh, I think we have to do something about the environment. Who cares? This stuff is just so attractive. It's entertainment. It's just super attractive. So, no. All right. So the better this is, the better Avatar is, the more we get sucked into it. It's going to be about water. There might be some subtext about the water rising somehow or other. And, we have to stop that from happening. Okay, so Cameron's trying to get us to kind of that to reflect, and so there is something like that. But how accurate is it? So that's why these tools would be. Cameron would love some of these tools. So one of these tools would be, for example, ICU. Now this beauty, he spent a lot of time talking about the culture and the language and so on and so forth. And this notion of I see you, I actually don't know if that's actually culturally based everywhere, but it's a beautiful aesthetic moment to say I see you, which is kind of like, you know, the multi-reflexive zero social distance. Is I see your soul, you know. I see you, I hear you, you know. We're good, okay? I'm not going to treat you like an object. No, we're equals. I see you, we're equals. And that is really deep. Okay. Now what happens if we did that with scale? Okay, and you shared it with somebody. You say like, I see you, and I share it with a friend. Oh, I see you. And then when they share it with another friend, I see you. And if they did that as kind of like you could call it for a sales thing for Avatar, it's not. It's the fact that we're saying to each other, I see you. And so when we're seeing the film, we've actually distributed something collectively, maybe a trailer for this, and we can generate ludicrous amounts of revenue, even if we just go, I see you, and here's a pound. We could generate, you know, millions, hundreds of millions, because it will be hundreds of millions of people that will watch this. But just now, it's just some kind of trailer put on YouTube. Well, but we could share that trailer through scale. I see you, okay? And let's go and see this film. I see you. And we're starting to talk about the social depth that we have demonstrated with the money. We could generate hundreds of millions to do something about the water level. We could generate billions. But it's not going to happen. And the reason why is because Mr. Cameron and everybody else, we don't have the right systems. We've got them. So, you know, we could do that collectively. But it's just a bit, you know, the timing's just off, you know, because I just haven't had the revenue. We can't do that for billions. Not with a current scale app. It'll break. We'll get up to 10 million and that'll be it. All right. However, you know, Cameron would love this. Okay. But, you know, it's probably going to be a little bit more of the same. All right. And the more people go for that, the less they're kind of, it's not that they're concerned about the state of the world. That's not quite right. But it's just the virtual is more attractive. What can we say? So I'm going to eventually get to Matrix. Okay. Let's go for Rick and Morty, just because that's super. That's an incredible show. It's not a film, I know, but it's just that is the most phenomenal. When I came across that one night, one evening, I was just looking at it, I found this thing. I was just like, that's amazing. And then about a week later, 2 weeks later, or something or other, Joe, he was like 13 at the time, 12, 13 at the time. He said, Rick and Morty. And I was like, oh, you've seen that? And he was like, yeah. I was like, how on earth could you get that? How on earth could you get Rick and Morty? I was like, that's really pushing the boundary for me. I'm like, I've not seen anything quite that fast. And the meta of it is just like, it's faster than hilarity. You can't laugh at the thing because it's happening so fast. It is unbelievable. I don't know how they're going to get beyond that. How are they going to get better than that? I have no idea. But what did I want to say about that? You know, what's going to happen in 20 years? At some point or other, there's going to be a kind of resurgence. You know, Rick and Morty, okay, it's going to eventually kind of die out for a bit. And then people maybe recreate it in some bizarre kind of way in about 20 years. I don't know what that's going to be, but I'm looking forward to it. I don't think, they can't bugger that one up. Okay, if they bugger that one up, I'd be, well, actually, it wouldn't really matter to me because I'd be 17. Quite frankly, when you're 17, it's like, doesn't matter anyway. I watched this film called Nerve. I watched it, I think it's 2014, 2016. 16, I think. And I'm sitting there starting to build, I think, the version before this version, like the second version. And it, have a look at Nerve. If you haven't seen Nerve, share it through Scale. Okay? It's the kind of games that we might end up playing. Not in a nice one. I mean, always when they do fictions, they usually go for the things that are not so good. Alright? And so obviously, because of danger. But there's an aspect of it which is very interesting, edge to it. Okay? And I think there are ways to do that, but in a way which has a bit of edge, but obviously not has this kind of like silliness that happens and people die. Do people die in the end of it? I can't remember. All right, you know, but the kind of danger that occurs. But have a look at it. It's an interesting thing. And we've actually got, Scale and various other, well, actually, mostly Scale, has got a way of doing that for live, watching people do things live, and therefore influencing people live, and with money flow. So it's interesting. Okay, they're interesting things. That's a version. Right. These are the three that influenced me when I was young. So here we go. This is it. Let's go for part 2 next. Okay. These are quite significant and quite interesting, and I would like to go into them in a reasonable amount of detail. So part 2, if you're interested. Please put a comment so that the person who shared this with you, can get it. And then, watch the second part if you want to. And at the end of the second part, maybe, I don't know if we're going to have that, decide to share. We might have a third part.